along with returning their checks. And here's a copy of that letter for each of you to have with your file. And I don't know, had this situation been handled the way I truly anticipated it would be, I wouldn't be saying what I'm going to say. And that is that I think maybe the selectmen, and we want to entertain changing banks. I felt as though with the problem being what it was, that money should have been back in our account the very day that they discovered that the error was theirs. They admitted to the error 100%, but they didn't seem to want to assume the responsibility for it. So it just left me personally in a feeling as though maybe that's not the bank that we really want to deal with.
Well, first thing I want to do is thank Diane, because everything she has done is exactly by the book. She had good records, she made a deposit, she got a receipt. The bank, for whatever reason, lost $66,000 and wouldn't accredit our account for that money until today. And within 24 hours from today, they will also credit the interest. But we haven't had time yet to talk to them about attorney's fees, Diane's extra work hours, etc. That should be discussed.
Are we aware of what action the town attorney took? Do we know at this point if she went to anyone further other than the bank?
The first person was, what, Dawn?
Yeah.
That started calling people, or
Dan
started calling people in town saying you haven't paid your taxes. Well, the attorney started there. She said she was going to work her way up the chain of command, at which point they bumped her over to TD North's attorney. She's been working with TD North's attorney, and we were agreed that if they did not find a solution by tonight's meeting, that we were going to the county attorney. Because this is basically a theft of monies. I think it's probably an internal problem with the bank, but it should never have gone this far.
I agree, and I would also like to say Diana did a great job. She handled it very professionally, and she was very stern with them from what I heard from her conversations with them, which is what she needed to be.
I didn't start out stern, because I started out truly believing that it would be all taken care of that day. But I guess when people get nasty and talk down to me, I get my back up. I guess because it became
she kept everybody fully informed,
yes,
which is very helpful. Our attorney has been very aggressive on this issue, and like I said, the money's in the bank as of tonight, except for interest, which will be there shortly. I think your suggestion about looking at other places to establish an account is probably timely.
Out of curiosity, how long have we been with those folks?
You have to ask.
Oh.
I believe we started out a million years ago. Basically, I think that was Farmington Bank, wasn't it?
Could change the
And
name.
then it was, what, Bank East? Or
Citizens was
Citizens?
Farming. No.
And Citizens was...
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
We have gone, so many, many years, I would say.
We've been at that branch
At that
location
branch in
for a
Willesboro,
long time,
yes. I think
even though it's
so.
changed names and possession over the years.
But Diane brought up an interesting point, and I think it's germane. Today she went to make another deposit at that bank. She was a little nervous and apprehensive about that.
Yesterday.
You know, our checkbooks are kind of sacrosanct, I don't know what the right word is here, but we don't expect anybody to play games with our money. And in this case, we had to get attorneys involved just to get the monies which were legally ours. And we should not have had to have done that.
Has the bank, are they assuring the people that the information on their check has not been compromised?
I don't know what they're doing with the people. I just know that they were calling people up, and I know the first information, the first person that called me and told me what the bank had told them, I went right through the roof. I was extremely unhappy.
And if they knew they were shredded, that's one thing. At least they know what happened to them.
You know, they say that they shred their checks 18 days. They only hold them for 18 days, and that's when they shred them. But somehow that money had to have been deposited in order for it to generate a deposit slip that I hold, an original, and Mary Lou. We always get 2 copies of the deposit slips, 2 original copies, one for the treasurer and one for myself. So somehow that money was in that bank long enough so that it did generate a deposit slip. And this is all in this brand new scanning system that they are new with.
I think that's part of the key, is that they had this new system that they hadn't worked the bugs out of yet. I don't think people's check information would be in jeopardy, primarily because those checks never cashed. So since they were supposedly shredded after 18 days and the bank can find no record of them, I don't feel their accounts should be in jeopardy.
No, none of the checks were cashed. It's just that they are non-existent at this point, and nobody seems to be able to give an explanation as to why they are non-existent, since we have the deposit slip for it. As I don't know if we will ever know why, and I really don't blame the people for being upset. Now, I know that people, at least 3 people whose personal checking account is at Profile Bank, called that bank to ask what they should do, because they really didn't know. And people, you know, rightly so, get very upset about that type of thing. And of course, I do not keep a record of every bank that every check is written on. And there were 39, you know, there could have been 20 or 30 different banks that those checks were written on. And quite a few of them, I think, were also written on TD Bank checks. But the only other banking individual I talked to, and I did it for myself, I think probably more than anybody, was Kim Orr at Profile Bank. And I just asked her point blanks. She already knew. And I said, is the town of Brookfield being unreasonable, expecting them to immediately credit our account? And she said, absolutely not. That's theft. So that's...
Yeah, it's there one moment, it's gone.
Thank you, I just wanted...
Yeah, it was probably a computer glitch. And for those people who wrote their checks and that are now missing and unaccountable for, the first step they should do is call their banks and cancel those checks and make sure the payment is never guaranteed on them. That would be the first thing I would do, is call my bank and say, check number so-and-so for this amount, cancel it, it's been lost, do not accept it. And they can stop payment on any check that you call into.
And that should be expensive, I think.
That should be an expense that TD Bank actually now would have to incur.
Should definitely yes, should definitely do some public relations work with all these people whose checks, I mean, you know, you hear of a check being lost once in a while in the mail, this and that and the other, but you don't really expect a bank to lose a bunch of checks. It's just not, I'm sure it happens, but it...
Well, they were probably disposed of in accordance with their rules and procedures after 18 days of being held. That's not the problem. It's probably not the problem is the checks. It's probably the computer software of this new system that hiccuped, and because it printed out a deposit slip.
That's right.
So you know the checks were accepted by the bank. You know
scanned.
And scanned, and you know they were in their possession. We've got proof of that because you have a deposit slip. All of a sudden it's gone. That's either somebody in the system playing with the accounts, which is theft, or it was a hiccup in the system, which one moment it's there and the next moment it's not because the system rebooted itself or a backup went through and wiped out that day's information, and now everything's gone. The checks were probably always there, and 18 days later, according to their procedures, they were shredded.
It wouldn't have wiped out that day's information because I happened to make 2 deposits that day and the other one went through just fine. So, but I don't know. I don't know if we
So it could be just, it could be related just to that one transaction.
But it was just that transaction, and that's the way we stand right now with it, as far as
Welcome to the computer age.
what we do now. Yeah. But
Well, if I could express my 2 cents for what it's worth, I think that's very humiliating to have a bank treat you in that fashion. And I think in a letter with some documentation to the CEO of Toronto Dominion Bank would be in order, saying they're very disappointed on that kind of behavior towards you and the town. That's my personal opinion.
I would concur.
Mm-hmm.
well, they didn't seem to take it as seriously as I guess I was taking it, or as I felt they should. I felt they should have done more for these people and you know, people get very upset when they think their taxes haven't been paid too.
Especially after they wrote the check.
That's right. That's right.
And with
I had received calls, you know, since the middle of July, you know, gee, my check hasn't gone through, and I said what I usually say is, gee, it probably just missed the cycle and it'll come through with your next statement, and it always does, but then I ended up just getting too many calls about this, and it's like, there's something amiss here, this is not right, so.
After what you
Anyway.
said, Diane, I may reconsider my association with TD Bank, North in Wolfboro, right?
Yep.
I may take my money out of there after hearing what you said.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it probably won't happen again. It was more the public relations and they fell short on, and I don't know if they meant to or if they just wanted to keep it within the bank and not have it spread further than it did. I don't know. But that's the situation anyway, and our money is back in the bank, and now we have to decide.
We'll give you some good talking points at your next workshop.
I don't know how little itty bitty Brookfield gets in the situations that we get in. I mean, you know, we're not big enough to count. Why are we getting involved in this?
Because we're Brookfield.
Because we're Brookfield.
I will be happy to look at other banks again. That's not a problem. I get approached every day, every time I walk in to Meredith Village
Yes,
Savings.
they want us.
Yeah.
They've approached me about it.
And what I would say to you is, in order to change the accounts, remember it's going to cost $250 to get new checks. It's going to cost another $50 to $65, as best I recall, to get deposit tickets.
I think any new